It's grim today, Tom. It's gray and dark and sadness in the sky.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's awful.
That's right.
Awful.
You live in the PNW.
I do. This is coming to you straight from the heart of seasonal depression, Portland, Oregon.
Oof.
But I did just get back from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is also the heart of Tornado Alley. And it has me thinking a lot about the weather.
Oh, okay.
How is your weather?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Always.
LA is just so stupid on so many levels. Just gifted with fantasticness and just jewels falling from the sky.
You may think that, but it got down to 60 yesterday. So, yikes. Yeah.
Well, Tom, the season, we're in the middle of severe weather season, and it got me thinking a lot about the weather, and I started poking around a little bit, and it turns out severe weather phobia is a thing. Did you know this?
No, but I guess that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. As many as 1 in 10 Americans suffer from severe weather phobia. Jill Coleman from Ball State University, she's a geography professor there. They just finished a study that was published in the American Meteorological Society Journal, and they document the kinds of concerns that come from folks, and the responses were interesting, aligning a lot of this sort of severe weather phobia to PTSD. And as we get an increasing frequency of severe weather events across the country, the frequency of severe weather phobia reports is going up.
Sure.
I thought some of these responses were really funny in this study. So 99% of all respondents say that they have some form of severe weather concerns. 99%.
Wow.
Right. Pretty much everybody. 80.5 say they don't actually suffer from a phobia. However, 10% of them feel that they do suffer from a phobia. They do suffer from the OCD that can come from always having to have notifications on their phone, always having to have Weather Channel on, always having to have this sort of notification so that they can hide, feeling like they need to hide from the outside, and those sorts of conditions. That's really scary because,
That's really scary, yeah.
Weather is all over the place, man.
There's really no getting around it.
Even in LA, it has weather.
Yeah. Well, no, if it rains here for 5 minutes, the entire city drowns. Like, we can't handle anything. The idea of climate change really becoming more and more of a reality. Well, it's totally a reality, but either way, depends on who you talk to. We are not equipped for even just rain.
No, not
we can't
rain.
do it. Everything immediately floods and somehow lights on fire. Like California is the potential to be a mess all the time.
This is what got me thinking, because all of this weather anxiety, it all kind of comes back to the media. The media has a really interesting place in reporting the weather. It's not like just news, which is, if it bleeds, it leads, and we have to terrify everybody because we need people to watch the ratings. The weather, in particular, is at a strange position on local news. They need you to feel a certain level of anxiety because they may need you to take action. They may need you to leave your house. They may need you to hide. They may need you to find a bunker.
It's not like an existential fear.
No.
It's a real notification fear. Sure.
That gets me to my story today. It turns out that, as reported at the National Weather Association annual conference this year, a group of psychiatric professionals and a group of meteorologists are working together to launch a new program to help alleviate some of the symptoms of storm anxiety, fear, anxiety, and all the way to severe weather phobia. They want to soften the anxiety triggers so that people who watch the news understand when they need to take action and when they simply need to be aware. And they've launched a whole program, the Storm Anxiety Project, Tom. The Storm Anxiety Project. It's being spent through 2019, just launched right now, and through the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps Stress Response Team based in Oklahoma City. They are providing lots of trainings both to emergency responders and to media professionals through the Office of Emergency Management to try to change the way they talk about the weather on the news. And I think that's kind of sweet.
That's very sweet, because you don't think about the news looking out for us that way.
Go ahead.
Instead of
what could you possibly say that's positive at the end of that sentence? That's funny. You don't think about the news. Fill in the blank crap hole. Welcome to What's That Smell? A sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxieties. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III.
And every week, we each drag one of our deepest, darkest anxieties into the light to share it, learn about it,
and hopefully laugh about it with all of you. Reach out to us. We want to hear from you and about your anxieties. Send us the story of your anxieties to something stinky at rashpixel.fm. Again, that was not my choice. And again, that's something stinky at rashpixel.fm. Gross. I don't care for it. This one is a bit of a mystery in that I don't really understand it. Doesn't seem to have a clinical term assigned to it that I could find. It relates to my childhood, and it still resonates with me, although lesser, but still, it still resonates today. And I honestly haven't opened up to many people about this in real life. Real life. Instead of podcast world. But I want to talk about it.
Don't worry. Nobody's listening, Tom.
Good point.
It's okay.
Oh, that's right. As Pete and I welcome to this episode of Shouting into an Empty Tunnel. But I want to talk about it. It can only help.
Here we go. I am at your service.
All right. We will start with an impossible puzzle. What do these 3 songs have in common? The 3 songs are Welcome Christmas from the Dr. Seuss Scrooge TV special. Do you remember which one Welcome Christmas is?
Is that the...
Fa who fores, da who dores. Yes, exactly.
Oh, I don't... Well, you know the words, you show off.
Thanks, Google. But they're nonsense words. Yeah. And then the second one is This Magic Moment by Jay and the Americans from 1969.
Okay.
This magic moment. And the final one is Around the Way Girl by LL Cool J in 1990. Do you remember that song? I need an around the way girl, round the way girl. What do those 3 have in common? Would you like to guess? You will not guess correctly.
Tommy, I don't know. You already let me off the hook because you said it's an impossible puzzle.
Correct.
I'm going to take that out.
Okay. Let's step away from these songs for now. We will come back to them.
Oh, goodness.
From as long as I can remember, I have suffered from a fear of not being able to go to sleep. I haven't suffered from not being able to go to sleep. I am very lucky in that I've never really suffered from actual insomnia. But bedtime has always been bedtime. I'm a child. Mm-hmm. But sleepy time has always been uneasy for me because I've suffered a fear of what if I'm not able to go to sleep.
Okay.
That in mind, I have 2 big memories that sort of light this up that I would like to share.
Okay.
The first is the story of Whompf. Let me explain. When I was growing up in Virginia, I used to stay over at...
Wait a minute. You're from Virginia?
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., lived in Vienna, Virginia, and in 4th grade moved to Boulder, Colorado. And now I live here in Los Angeles. It's like I'm on the lam. No, I guess that's not that much. Did I never tell you that?
Probably shouldn't do the podcast, I guess. But interesting story. Nice little road trip.
My grandparents owned 17 acres of land. There was a garden as part of it. There was a forest, and I used to love being there. I would go there after school a lot because my parents both worked, and my dog Oso and I would run all around the 17 acres. We had secret passages. There was a forest. It was absolutely fantastic. And then sometimes I would stay over there for night, and that could be really hard for me. I remember waiting for the Whompf. Now, what that is I would sleep in a back bedroom, but it was close enough to the living room where I could still hear the TV that was going if someone was watching it. I couldn't really hear what they were watching, but you could just sort of hear that sort of murmur.
So far, you've described an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
How come?
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm sort of in Signs.
Yeah, well, there is a huge twist at the end of this. I'm actually Foster, my dog. No, I was dead the entire time. So what it was is they had one of those old-timey TVs that were... I shouldn't say old-timey. They were TVs, but they were really thick.
Thick TVs.
Like, cathode tubes? Are those a thing?
CRT,
I don't remember.
Yeah, they were cathode ray tubes. Yeah, an old CRT TV.
I could still hear the sort of murmur. And in the back bedroom where I slept over, I could hear that. And that made things okay. Because as far as I can connect to it, that meant other people were awake. Mm-hmm. Because either my grandmother or grandfather was out there watching TV. And then I would hear the Whompf. Do you remember turning off old TVs? They would make this sort of like a Whompf noise. And that meant that the television set was turned off. And that meant I was alone. And I immediately felt like everyone was asleep except me. Everyone's doing fine. No one knows that I'm still awake and can't fall asleep. To be honest, there was something incredibly, I won't even say unsettling. There was something very terrifying about that. And this happened a lot during my childhood. This gets a little serious, unfortunately. In junior high, there was the light under the door. My bedroom was on the second floor. My door was closed, and you could see light from the kitchen downstairs. And the light from the kitchen downstairs meant that one or both of my parents was still awake, doing some work, watching TV, whatever parents do. I'll never know. It became sort of in my mind, a bit of a competition to, if I can fall asleep before the light under the door went out, then I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I would join the world of sleep. Of course, when you're trying to do something like falling asleep, obviously the opposite happens. So I would keep opening my eyes every once in a while in order to check. And then, because unlike the Whompf, lights don't make any noise, at some point I would open my eyes and the light would be off and everything would be dark. And I would be flooded with anxiety. Again, about the fact that there's something about the fact of that I believe that everyone is asleep except me. And there's something very lonely about that. And what if I can't get to sleep?
But it sounds like because you don't suffer from insomnia, like what you are describing, the next step is you can't actually get to sleep. Did you ever get to the point where you would just forget to be awake and then it went away? Or did you actually suffer from staying awake?
Sometimes I would stay awake for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it wasn't really insomnia. So I was ultimately able to fall asleep. I was not sleep deprived.
Yeah.
I guess but that doesn't take away the negative aspect of that horrible feeling before I go to sleep. And I'm sure it took longer.
It totally doesn't. It is more of a surprise that it didn't turn into something more chronic.
Which I'm very lucky for. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Throughout my childhood, I did try things to help me get to sleep. And my parents were actually very helpful with this. They don't know potentially about how deep this went, but I started listening to things. And there was a record of Paddington. It was a vinyl record of the story of Paddington. And that was my nighttime soundtrack for many years. This is before junior high. Sorry, let's go back. I don't want to completely And that's what I listen to today. Gotta go. And then after that, there was a cassette tape of Curious George that I used to listen to. But once I got to junior high and into high school, which are anxiety-ridden times for lives of many people, the dread of not being able to get to sleep took a turn and affected what I was trying to listen to at the time while trying to sleep. And that's where the songs I mentioned before finally joined this story.
You listened to Dr. Seuss to go to sleep.
There were certain songs that I listened to that, because they didn't help and I was going through such bad anxiety, they became the soundtrack to my anxiety. And to this day, I honestly have trouble hearing those songs. It's not like I go into a full panic, but I actively want to turn them off.
Because they've been like sensorily paired to your anxiety?
Absolutely. They've imprinted.
Wow.
Yes, exactly right. And so that Grinch song with that weird Flore Domine song
is haunting.
Yes, because it was the soundtrack to my anxiety. Later, I would listen to old cassettes that my parents had. This would have been a age when I wasn't able to buy my own stuff, and they had a collection of oldies. That's where this magic moment comes in. And then in 1990, I had just started high school, and so that's when I would listen to the radio. I guess the radio? I can't remember what we used to listen to. I guess it was a radio, a teletype. And back then, Around the Way Girl by LL Cool J was super popular, and so that would always be playing. And so those three songs, including other ones, make me goosey. Again, the clinical term, when I hear them.
You can't listen to all three of those songs because of your anxiety. I chalk that up to you're off the hook, man. That's great.
Oh, like, it's not like I tried to fall asleep to the soundtrack to Hamilton and now I'm screwed and can't enjoy that. Yeah. But Pete, lady love Cool James. You gotta get your LL Cool J in there.
You know, it's funny. I've talked about I've had trouble with sleep, and we've talked about that in other episodes where struggling with the invasive thoughts at night thing. And so I absolutely relate. And as an adult, I also have the challenge with the fear of falling asleep. For me, it actually does end in anxiety or in anxiety-induced insomnia, where I'm just up. But it was never associated with a particular a fear, and that's the thing that I think is sort of touching me. It's that it didn't turn into any. It's not necessarily related to, or may not be related specifically to sleep, but more to this childhood fear. This Shyamalan scale fear of the light under the door. I mean, I can just feel that.
Yeah.
The Shyamalan scale is a new thing that we're coining
Oh, the
today.
Shyamalan scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you on the Shyamalan scale? Point on the Shyamalan scale where he touched you. It's not. The best I can tell about what I was worried about is at first it was, and this is the most interesting one, because later, I'll skip to the second one. The later one, it just involved our old friend's social anxiety. Uh-huh. It evolved into a fear of, I will be tired, so I will not be able to perform socially as well as I can the next day. I won't be as on. Yeah. An ability to either make people laugh, have people like me, which is pretty important to me. Before then, though, it really just seemed to be, like I talked about, everyone is fine and happy and asleep but me, and no one knows. I can't parse exactly what I was feeling. It might have just been loneliness, but that's the part that I can't relate to as well. You have any insight?
No, well, I don't know about insight, but as a child, that strikes me as something that I would be so easily able to transfer, right? Yeah. Everybody's asleep but me, and no one knows. It's so easy to turn into, I am drowning and no one knows. I am, you know what I mean?
Abandonment, fear of loneliness.
Exactly. And that is, that to me just screams like that panic state that is, it's so palpable as a kid. So what does it do to you today? Like, how do you...
now?
Yeah. And I wonder, because there are people who still, I mean, even as an adult, I mean, you're pushing 60, and do you...
Jerk.
Like, do you
just
find you still
just from the neck down?
Yeah. Do you find you need to listen to things? Now, because I'll tell you, when my wife travels, and she travels for a week out of every month, she goes away to the Eastern Oregon, and I am alone in a giant bed with a dog. And I find often I have to close out the world by listening to something. I'll put on a podcast that I don't, and just put it kind of low, one that I've already listened to or something, just to have voices.
Yes.
Right? Do you still do it?
I do to this day. It's tough to find a lot of new information about this, especially because it doesn't completely exist.
And nobody cares.
And I'm all alone.
You're all alone.
There's a ton of articles that I looked up, but they all really pretty much boil down to, if you're anxious about getting to sleep, then it'll be harder for you to get to sleep. Thanks, Internet. Great job.
That's super
nice byline. And so instead, the learning section is, this is what I now have learned for myself and what I use when I need it, and which is pretty much every night, but it's okay. Number one, the first thing that I've learned is don't just lay there. There's such an impulse to, if I just lay here and keep my eyes tight, really, shut. Keep my eyes tight, really shut. Keep my eyes shut, really tight. Then sleep will happen and sleep will happen. You can't force yourself to sleep. Of course, those articles actually did, I guess, help. You can't force yourself to sleep. I now know that if I can't sleep, then it's not time to sleep. And so turn on the light and read.
Yes.
Relax. You're going to be fine.
Absolutely.
And I have a book that I'll usually be rereading. In addition to a normal book that I'll be reading, I'll have an old favorite on standby that I've read many times before. That's almost kind of like saying hello to an old friend. So it's not too interesting. I know everything that's going to be happening, but you can just sort of, it's a version of literary white noise, in effect, that you can just sort of pull over yourself. What? I'm bad at similes. Okay, anyways. Number two, a big part of that, I don't even know what a simile is confronting the fear head on. What am I really worried about? That I'm going to be a little tired the next day? Has that ever really affected me? No. What else am I really worried about? Oh, that's kind of it. Other than my mind racing, this is just about worrying about sleep. Obviously, if there's other stuff going on and I have worries the next day, everyone goes through that. I'm not talking about that as much. And the last one is get yourself a foster, because my dog sleeps in my bed, which my parents are weirdly horrified by. I thought that's what the point of having a dog was. Yeah.
That is the point of having a dog. I think that's codified somewhere.
I forgot that Bogey, our dog back in Colorado, he never slept in the bed, but it just, I wasn't going to do it. And then he got up on the bed once and I was like, this is your bed. And he takes up most of the bed. He's tiny and he manages to push me out of bed a lot. But and I wonder if that, of course, I didn't make this connection until just now.
What?
I'm not sleeping. I'm alone. everyone is fine and happy and asleep but me, and I'm alone.
Yeah.
Having a foster in your bed.
You're not alone.
Yeah. There's someone else there
that checks out.
that even I can wake up if need be. And he goes, which is the noise he makes when he doesn't like it when I wake him up.
A Formula One car.
Right. Yeah. Foster is a motorboat, right? So those are the things that work for me. They won't work for everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of research about that. Exercise is very important. Breathing exercises you can do. But those are the things that have worked for me. The most important one is don't just lay there. If you're not ready to sleep, you're not ready to sleep. Don't try to force yourself.
I would just throw in there, because everything that you said is spot on for me, except for your dog, because I have mine. But I would also throw in, and one that I haven't used but comes highly recommended, is a podcast. It's called the Sleep With Me podcast.
Oh, I've listened to that. No, I used to listen to that a long time. I just haven't recently. But yes, it's great. It's actually a little bit too interesting. So I have to turn.
That's the problem.
I have to turn it down. Right. I have to turn it down. Oh. Weird. So many connections. I turn it down so it's the equivalent of my grandmother's television. I can hear a murmur. I can hear voices, but I can't make out what they're saying. But it's that creak thing. It's just enough to be like, I can focus on it, but I can't really focus on it. And I'm trying to hear you.
Yeah. You need that Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. It is, for those who haven't heard of it, the Sleep With Me podcast, it's a lulling, droning, boring bedtime story to distract your racing mind. And it is designed for you never to get to the end of an episode. If you get to the end of an episode, they feel like they failed. So it's really a brilliant concept. And it is put together by a guy. It's now been absorbed into the Welcome to Night Vale team, but it's been put together by a guy who suffered from sleep issues for a long time, and he's helping the community. And I think it's just brilliant and gracious and just a beautiful thing that exists.
It's great because he is a terrible storyteller on purpose.
Right, that's the whole idea.
Great.
Yeah. The other thing that I have had to do in terms of just life change is I have to stop working when I need to stop working, right? Like before dinner. If I work after dinner and into the night and bring the laptop to bed, I am sunk. I will never be able to actually clear my head. Yeah.
Right.
I'm spinning.
Because you have the kind of lifestyle where your work will never actually end.
Thanks for reminding me, Tom.
Like, I assume while we're recording right now, you are also editing another podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It's really difficult, and I just think most important. I think you actually came to an awakening just a minute ago about what it means to be alone. That I think is really powerful, and I think that's fantastic. And more power to you, because just being able to use words to define that feeling in a new way is awesome. Mazel tov.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Are you supposed to say that? I'm not a Jew. Tom, after my issue last week, I've really struggled with how to introduce what I want to talk to you about this week in a way that is non-racially confrontational. But I have to ask this question.
Okay.
How are Italians even alive? I'm going to broaden that. Like Europeans, how are they alive right now? Because of what they eat.
Oh, I see.
Breads and pastas.
It's all carbs and cheese.
The Italians, as a rule, are a good-looking people.
Sure.
Even older Italians, right? I saw The Godfather. There's some good-looking older Italians. They wear that mafia pride. They eat their pasta. Yep. There's sexy Italians. There's fit Italians. All the Italians. And they eat so much stuff that is considered crap here, right? By conventional measure, conventional wisdom. Everything that is eaten, they shouldn't eat. Now, I recognize that this is a wildly unfair comparison when we live in the land of food deserts and such abundance of convenience foods, right? I recognize that. It is foolish for me to even say that.
Sure.
But I do want to ask you, Tom, how do you eat? How do you feel about the way you eat?
Pretty good, I guess. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I would say it's 75% good adult eating and 35% garbage that I should feel bad about. You'll notice that if you add those up, that's more than 100%, because also part of the problem is I do actually eat too much. My eating like an idiot lasted a little bit longer than it should have. Like how you eat when you're in college. When you're free and you're like, yay!
Yeah, it's pretty much straight up Taco Bell.
It's all cheese. It's whatever you can afford or whatever's in the dining hall, except for stir fry night.
Oh, man. I used to eat so much cereal and juice and Coke in those little tiny glasses. I would fill up 6 of those on my tray.
So that's back before you were afraid of juices. Because now it's well documented your fear of juice. But my palate has exploded in a good way, and I'm getting more and more over the last few years. No, more than few years, like 5 or 6 years, cooking. Like I really like cooking for myself, and I like experimenting with new kind of dishes and things. And so as a result, I mean, fresh food is always going to be better. So I'm feeling better about it, but I can definitely. It wasn't too long ago when I might as well have been a child.
Oh yeah.
Why do you ask?
Tom, I have
you ate a person, didn't you? Oh no, Pete. You ate an Italian. Pete! That's a crime. We've got to hang up and I have to call a lawyer. Why am I calling a lawyer? Probably. Yeah. I'm complicit.
It's been some dark times for me related to food. I feel like I'm on an incredible roller coaster that swings from, love and abundance to just rage and hate of food. And it's fascinating to kind of be in this space with food. I think it starts because I have a first degree family member who has celiac disease.
What's that?
Now, what do you know? You don't know? What do you know from celiac disease?
Does that have something to do with gluten? Doesn't everything have to do with gluten?
See, there you go. You are part of the problem.
Oops.
Bet you didn't know I'd be doing that to you. Here's the deal. Celiac disease, it is an autoimmune disorder. And autoimmune means that it's when your immune system attacks itself or attacks its host, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so celiac is an autoimmune disorder. And what happens, how is it related to gluten? Because I think this is wildly misunderstood. Gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, rye, and barley. And so, people have been totally thinking that gluten is a villain, right? They make fun of it. I think even the new Avengers movie in the trailer, it's like, I saved you. I rounded up all the gluten in the world and shot it into space where it can't not hurt you ever again.
Deadpool 2.
Deadpool 2, that's right. That's Deadpool 2. So it's being totally joked about, right? That gluten is a villain. But gluten is not the villain in itself. Because celiac is an autoimmune disorder, when people with celiac disease eat gluten, as the protein hits their system, their bodies get confused and their own immune systems attack their small intestines.
Oh, no.
It is an oh no kind of a thing. This can severely damage the villi that line the small intestine. Now, what do the villi do, Tom?
Are they little hairs?
They're little hairy fingers, right?
Okay.
They line the intestine, and their job is to absorb the nutrients into the body from your digesting food.
Important.
If your own immune system is destroying the villi in your intestine, you are at great risk to other super serious health problems. And that's why this is a big deal. According to the Celiac Foundation, this leads to things like diabetes and MS and anemia and osteoporosis and infertility and epilepsy and, not to be outdone, intestinal cancer. On the way there, Tom, as you can imagine, you can spiral down this long road to malnourishment town as your body just sort of depletes itself, suffering from not getting the nutrients that you need to be able to extract from the food you eat.
Sure.
And so there is no treatment other than strict adherence to a gluten-free diet. And because, Tom, this is the... gluten.
What? Gluten!
Because...
Gluten!
Because it's an autoimmune disorder, it doesn't matter how much gluten you eat. Even crumbs from a cutting board can trigger a dramatic reaction that can take weeks to rebound and still do permanent damage to your small intestine in the process. So it is
Who in your life suffers from this? You said
my madre.
Oh, mama.
my mom, and has been
okay.
diagnosed for decades, and she lives just fine right now. But she went over the process. Their doctors thought she had AIDS, and at one point they said she had. I swear to God, it was like straight out of Joe versus the volcano. Tom, it was like you have a brain cloud. It was just obscure things because they didn't know, and because this was decades ago, and once they figured out
because we didn't know what it was yet.
Yeah, we didn't know what we didn't know. And now she has a rigorous diet and happens to have fallen in love again with food. I am not there. And I hate that gluten is so lampooned in the media because it makes the severity of the impact to those who are actually living with celiac disease.
Yeah.
That sucks. Also because it's super genetic.
Oh, no.
Is this a direct relative
and you
of
enter
someone...
the picture?
Yeah, right. Enter me. A direct relative of someone with celiac disease has a 1 in 10 chance of developing it themselves. And the tests are notorious for false negatives.
What?
Stupid,
false negatives.
Stupid tests. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the test, do you have celiac disease?
Yes,
just the question. You're like, no. And they're like, you're good to go.
Yeah, I look at my doctor and I kind of poke around where I think my intestine is, and I feel fine. This is really what has led me to deal with some of the food resentment issues. And I know I'm not alone because I started searching for this, and it is a major topic of discussion. And it's not, there is actually a phobia around this. It's called sitophobia. It's not quite the same. Sitophobia is a fear of eating due to the unpleasant symptoms that follow eating due to chemotherapy. That's one interpretation of it. It is abdominal pain that follows eating. So it's psychoneurotic abhorrence of food is another definition, a morbid dread or a repugnance to food, whether generally or only to specific dishes. So that is a phobia of food that is different from what I have. I don't have a very good relationship with food because I feel like it betrays me. I hate food because I love food so much.
I see. Okay.
Right? That's what gets to this lizard brain because I'm a child. I won't eat that. I don't want to live a life subservient to nuts and berries. I won't do that. And so I find myself really struggling with that roller coaster. And there are some really common refrains, right? Food made me fat. Food made me skinny. Food is good. Food is bad. Food is controlling my life. Food is poison. And, food could kill me. If I eat, a hamburger with a bun, it is deteriorating my life. Now, it is not, I at this point have not received a positive diagnosis for celiac, but I go and get tested every year because it can happen anytime. My mom was
really, it can just lay dormant and then show up?
Yeah. Yeah, it just shows up.
That's fun.
It just shows
That's
up.
Fun.
It's not really. I mean, I get your sarcasm, but it's not really fun.
That sounds terrible.
No, it's really terrible. So,
God,
it could be in you.
What?
Yeah. The trick is, and this is where I struggle. Is sometimes I just want to go out and eat that hamburger, and sometimes while I'm doing it, I'm thinking about this could lead to a grim outcome. What am I doing to deteriorate my overall health? And
wait though, I'm trying to boil down what your phobia or what your anxiety is. Is it that if you eat gluten, it might cause celiac disease, or eating a bunch more gluten can actually contribute to that? Or
I don't know how to answer that question as a non-doctor.
Okay.
But
what? You're not a doctor?
But
oh my God, this whole thing is a lie. Okay.
But at any time, like it could be just as easy. My next physical, and my doctor says, well, time to make some changes to your diet. And that triggers the lizard brain child response. And I live in fear of that day. And it's so stupid.
Having something taken out of your potential diet.
Yes.
Because your body no longer reacts well to it.
Right.
That's the child thing of don't do that.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. I needed a little bit more of a roundabout. Got it.
No,
okay.
I'm glad we could do that again because it felt really good the first time. So just keep hammering it home, Tom. That's great. So I've been through a number of different diets and tried a whole bunch of different things. I've tried, the high protein diets. I've tried the high healthy fat diets. I've tried all these things, and I realized they were all contributing to.
And is this to lose weight, or why are you trying all these different diets?
No, it's more of a lifestyle thing.
Okay.
It's more of a lifestyle thing. Just making sure that I'm trying to build the right habits around food so that I live a long and healthy life. That is my ultimate goal. And if I normalize at the right weight, so much the better. Anyhow, I've tried all these kinds of things, and all of them address food in a way that eventually leads to resentment, and that is really frustrating to me. So where I am and where I have been for most of the last probably 6 months is in a different place, and I have found a fasting diet where I eat 5 days out of the week, and I don't eat for 2. And
2 in a
I don't
row?
eat anything. Two separate days.
Okay.
And I've gotten on kind of a rhythm, and now I don't eat. And so I haven't yet found the food hatred that I have normally had, because on those other days, the 5 days, I largely eat what I choose. I don't drink a lot of sodas anyway. Like, I'm not a real soda drinker. I like my coffees, and I occasionally will get a treat at a movie theater, when I go to a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But largely that's not my kind of food. Really, I am worried about other issues with my health and eating the right stuff. So I constantly struggle with this. I constantly struggle with the feelings of hating myself because of bad decisions that I've made around what I eat, because I feel like every day, every bite I take of something that is at all related to a negative impression of food or negative health is taking a day off the end of my life. And so that is an image that I have trouble shaking. And so I'm trying to get my head around that. I'm calling it an anxiety because it's constantly there, but I found no word that really defined what it was that I deal with. I found a lot of people talking about it, but none of them have a word to define it. For
this push-pull of your relationship with food.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't know if it's interesting. I really don't. But you don't. You don't have this issue with food. You pretty much just you tell me now you eat like a grown-up.
I do. I feel like I eat like a grown-up. Not always, and I definitely do eat things that I not regret later, but I know at the time this is not good for me, and then I try to balance that with what I eat next. I definitely have issues with my weight. I do not care for it. I wish I was less of a person physically. I'm right where I want to be emotionally, Pete. But physically, I actually have reverse body dysmorphia in that sometimes, like, I think I look better than I do. Because then I'll pass by a reflection or a mirror and I'll be like, ugh, what? That's what I look like? Because I feel like the lighting in my bathroom somehow is incredibly flattering. So I go out in the day and I'm like, I'm my best self. And then I pass by a bank window and I'm like, oh my God, who ate me? What is happening?
Well, bank windows are notoriously circus windows. You can't
they're always
that.
Funhouse mirrors.
Yeah,
why do you do that, banks? It's so your money looks bigger.
Right.
So I definitely have that. I guess I wrongly relate it more to exercise. And I know that food is really the biggest thing about trying to lose weight or health is just really portion control and what you eat. Yeah.
That is the number one thing I've learned in all of this is that the swings of you exercise for general overall health, for organ health, for blood health, for heart health, not for weight. And so going to the gym, spending 2 hours at the gym and then going and eating, crap all day is not going to help you lose weight if you don't change what you eat. So it's all that. I think that is the common wisdom. For me, it's about trying to change the relationship that I have with food so that I don't hate it so much because I resent it. It's a massive weight. It really feels like a true gorilla on my back when I'm fixating on it. I mean,
is your fasting diet, that's the way to deal with that? Because that's not taking away what you want to eat, but it's also taking away everything for a day or two. I'm surprised that actually works.
It's remarkable. I would say my most productive days are my days when I'm not eating. And it's not just because, hey, I can work through lunch, I don't think. I find I have more energy until the very end of the day. I have more energy throughout the day when my body is just like processing.
Sure.
Like it's just my gut is empty, my stomach is empty. I'm just just moving along. There's this doctor, Michael Mosley. He was a doctor and journalist for the BBC, and he was asked to go check out the research being done on intermittent fasting. And so he traveled all over the world, and he discovered that it turns out all of these university researchers that are doing research on fasting are onto something, that it's not just about the food. It's about the fact that after you have been without food for 12 hours, your body goes into what's called a cellular rebuilding mode, right? That your cells begin to repair. And so he started doing it himself, and he went through a whole bunch of different iterations and ended up writing a book, The Fast Diet. Michael Mosley is his name, and I learned a lot in that book. Obviously, he's an advocate. It's one of those books that is, sometimes full of a little bit thin support, but largely, I mean, he's a physician first. And so his arguments are presented, I think, very clearly. And it was interesting to adopt it myself. The more I do it, the easier it is for me to look at food and not hate it quite so much. And so it's a journey, right? It's a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But I find when I can wake up on the mornings, I actually get to celebrate breaking a fast twice a week. And I think I've grown a little addicted to that. The feeling of the first thing I get to eat after not eating for 36 hours is quite great. And I feel like I'm more productive. So, here's hoping it's something that's long term, but that's where I am today.
You weekly have like your own Lent that just lasts 24 hours. Yeah.
And I'm giving up food anxiety for Lent.
I'm glad that you found something that works for you. In your honor, I'm going to plan to do my own 5-2. Is that 5 days I will eat normally, and then for 2 days of the week, I will eat twice the amount that a human should eat, because we've got to keep the economics going, Pete. If you're just going to cut food out, I'm eating your share and mine. So,
and it's all going to be made up in soy futures.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to buy a bunch of stock, and then I'm going to eat an Italian like we talked about before. I wish us both a lot of luck. Stick around for a glimpse into next week's show. But first,
today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/scent-of-a-podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or other MP3 player. You can't lose.
You can't lose. It's a win-win. And Pete, this is true. Everything I've said up till now is a lie, but this is true. I talked in my anxiety about having a book, an old favorite book that you've read many times before. And I love this book so much. I read it at least once a year, and I've listened to it too. It is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. It is the beginning of the Ender's Game, I don't know, quadrology. I think he's written 900 of them. You don't have to read them all. I haven't, but I have read, and most importantly, through Audible, listened to Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. It is the story of a young boy who may or may not in the future be the savior for the human race. I'm just back and forth with sci-fi, and even if you're not a huge sci-fi fan, this book is amazing. And you can find it on Audible, and I listened to it. The cool thing is it's narrated by a cast. It's not just one person. So it really makes it kind of a cinematic experience for your ears. The special 20th anniversary edition of Ender's Game is available right now on audible.com. It is 11 hours and 57 minutes. So maybe time that with your fasting days. I don't know how you live your life, however it works, but it is fantastic. And Audible is absolutely the best. And I think you'll really enjoy it.
For you, listeners of What's That Smell, Audible is offering a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out the service, sample, listen to all the little samples that they offer you. Again, just visit www.audibletrial.com/scent-of-a-podcast and search for Ender's Game Special 20th Anniversary Edition. We've got it. We've got the whole catalog of the Enderverse books, Tom. The whole catalog.
The whole one?
And they're amazing.
Thanks, Audible.
Today's tune is Feel Alive by Rex banner.
And guys, as we said before, we don't pay to advertise this show, so we really appreciate you sharing it with others you think would be interested. Since we're a new show, those 5-star reviews in iTunes and Apple Podcasts really, really help others to discover the show. So if you like what you've heard, and we hope that you have, share the love with a review and a comment. I know it sounds like a pain. I promise it will only take you 3 to 4 minutes, and it means the world to us. So thank you.
Coming up next week.
It's not like he's angry, but it's just this cold, weird stare. And I can picture him thinking about all the knives in the house.
This actually is kind of serious. I didn't go to the dentist for 18 years.
But wait, how often are they... What? For 18 years? Do you still have teeth? What if that's what death was like? At the very end, you're like, I wonder what my mailman is seeing. That sucks.
Until then, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III. Thank you so much for downloading. We'll be back next week on What's That Smell?